energy. But also, there's a friend of mine named Jerry Wills who claims that he was told by a shaman to utter a certain sound or tone, and he literally walked through this door and disappeared onto the other side. Mm-hmm. And this is what the legends say, too. They say that there have been people they've seen disappear, and then there have been like elders or masters, they call them, with like hoods on. They come out of that door, kind of like looking around to see what's going on in our world. So, Peru is filled with these kind of unbelievable sights and amazing frequencies and energy. And it would be a really good place for people from our far past who knew at this time in our future, in their future, which is our present, that we would need to have their sacred tools again. So Peru would be a good place to take it and hide it until it's the right time for it to come out again.
Right. Well, and it is interesting that you bring up the fact that that the tones open these portals. I don't know if you've defined them as portals, but doorways or whatever. I think some people would define them as portals. But
yep.
The interesting thing about it is that's the part that has been shared with me too. That there's certain sounds that have to do with actuating the portal. Now. I've heard that from more than one spiritual person from around the world. I know that you can. I know it's interesting. Bringing it back to sacred stones in other countries and everything like that. It's funny to talk about these different types of things that you have to have certain. Geography as well as certain different vibrational sections, and I think that people don't take that into consideration at all because from a standpoint of that,
No, I think you're correct. Some people would call it a code or a tone, a sound. Music for me has always been very important. The most powerful meditations I have with the skulls is when I'm listening to the right music that resonates with me. It just sometimes I can go very deep in the meditation, get very emotional, feel like I'm linking into the part of ourselves that's always in joy, which is absolutely there. And so I believe that besides this door I'm talking to you about that's in Peru, there are many other similar doors like this, and ways to go into the other dimension if you know the right code or the right sound to make. I think I'm trying to remember something to do with the ancient Hebrews. Also, there was something about a certain sound. Oh, it was like Joshua. He's blowing the horn around that city, and then all of a sudden it disintegrated.
Right. Yeah.
So sound is very important. Also, they're thinking, too, that these large blocks that we find in pyramids and everything, that they could have levitated those blocks with sound.
Right.
Also.
Right. I think that's very, very important for people to realize is that the sound part of it, and most people don't realize this either, is when, if you go to sort of France and deal with even the old caves where they found, the ancient cave paintings and things like that. I've been lucky enough to go there, but it's also interesting to know that these paintings, as well as pictographs in Native American history too, they all seem to be centered in one location. In other words, if you look at pictographs from around the world, you seem to be able to see, if it had nothing to do with anything, if it had nothing to do with acoustics, they would be spread out, But these things always are put in a certain area, and then whenever you play music off them or invoke certain tones or anything like that, you can actually hear things back. So visual as well as musical seems to be one of the parts that we're not considering whenever we're really taking a look at a lot of different things. I think that you're right, Joshua, in the way that the music really encompasses, whether that's through vibration or anything else. I mean, we don't realize that our body is so much made of water that basically, any vibration from music or a speaker itself is actually interacting with our cells and our body itself.
Well, I think too, if you think about it, one of the times where we feel, I think, happy and joyful is when, you're dancing to music, a certain music that you like to dance to. There's the expression of that inner joy. So I think, music is very important. Yeah. So anyway, getting back to the Blue Skull, I don't know if there will be a fourth trip, because that's what came up on the third trip, that the circle was not complete. So it's like you need 4 points to create the circle. Mm-hmm. But I haven't felt a strong affinity to go back, because it's the same thing like for me writing a book. When it's time to write a book, all of a sudden I start seeing how to organize the book and what it's going to be about and everything. So it's the same when I travel to places or go to certain areas. I feel drawn that I need to do that. So I have no idea, like when this skull might appear or how it's all going to work out. I just know for the moment that for me, it's there in the etheric energy level. It's as real to me as any of the other crystal skulls I have here. And, I think that when this one comes out, it's going to be a signal for some other skulls. Now, whether this is one of the original 13 or not, I can't tell you. I just know it's a life unto itself. That's the way that I experienced it. It's as if the life force that is working through this so-called crystal skull is the crystal skull.
Right.
So we just have to see where that goes. Now, taking it a little bit further, going into the story that we've written, how we brought the Blue Skull in, since we moved into the Seattle area, which was basically back in 2011, so we lived there for about 7 years.
Right.
All of a sudden, I start getting this bug that I need to go to the local libraries, which are very good. The libraries around Seattle are very good. And I need to start reading books on the paranormal. And it was like a mad obsession with me. So I started doing that, and then I met a couple of spiritual mediums, like I said, in Seattle. And, I had a lot of fun just sitting there listening to the spirits speaking through these gifted people who were willing to, make, I thought, a big sacrifice to step aside and let the spirit speak through their physical body. Mm-hmm. But then there was this burning question that came to me, which really formed the basis for our novel. And that was, I wanted to know what really happens when we go on the other side meaning when we're done here on the earth and we finished everything that we've come here to do. And we go, as Sylvia Brown says, because I've been reading her books, we go home, we go back to our true home, which she calls the other side. What is that reality like? Because we keep hearing it's like heaven, and you create your reality there with the power of your mind. It's instantaneous. There's no time and space. You can be in multiple places at once. So this got me really inspired to read different books and things like that. But then in 2014, I remember it was right around my birthday, either before or after, we went to this restaurant. And I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking, in the movie, it's that movie with Jodie Foster.
Arrival or Contact or?
Contact, that's right, Contact. What happens to Jodie Foster in Contact is they get this communication through, digital and audio and visual signals from Vega. and it sends them a diagram how to build this structure so you can go visit them. And so she eventually, at the end of the movie, gets to visit. And when she goes, like through various wormholes through this device. But while she's doing this, the people are watching her, and her craft is just like flying from the top through the bottom, doesn't seem to be going anywhere. But she has this tremendous experience, meets her father, who really is an alien, and says, this is the way we do it. And then she only gets to spend like 5 or 10 minutes with him, and then he says, okay, now I got to go back. But this is just a start, and we'll get a chance to meet again. And she goes back, and she doesn't have one shred of proof that she had that experience, except they find at the end of the movie that the videotape of her journey, instead of having only 5 minutes or whatever it was, it has more than 20 hours of static on it. So they find that very unusual. So I'm thinking all about these things and thinking about what would it be like, what is it really like on the other side? And as I go to touch the handle to the restaurant, Spirit whispers to me, here's how you're going to do it. You're going to record visually, like in 3D, everything that happens to your main character when he goes to the other side. So when he comes back, he'll have these 3D videos to show people. And what will happen is as people watch it and experience exactly what he experienced on the other side, because Spirit will be creating this advanced technology. So it works on both ends, from the Earth and from the other side, because you need a camera on each, basically, for it to work. Then he comes back and he starts sharing this, and this is what brings planetary peace to the planet, because he's coming back from the other side with the answers to every single question that any human being has ever asked to understand who we are, what are we doing here, what's our relationship to the universe, and where do we go after we finish here. So I thought this would be a great story, and so basically Spirit showed me how to do it, and what it was is book number 1, you meet the characters, and then the main character, his name is Joseph Schwartz. He's invited to go to a dimensional door, a little bit like a Stargate portal, where you have light coming out, and it looks like when you walk through, you're going into some other reality. Shows up on the same place I went to look for the blue skull, which is the Laguna Negra. So I used that picture on the cover, and we put in the dimensional door and our main characters. So he gets invited to go there, and he learns that, he's going on the other side and he's going to have this opportunity. So book 1, you meet him, and we talk about all different kinds of subjects, Sasquatch, UFOs, the hollow earth, the electromagnetic grid, ETs. We have shamans that show up, numerology, I think, is talked about. The Philadelphia experiment under a different name, the Montauk experiment under a different name, so we're just bringing up all these things, talking about kind of like what's going on in the world. And then eventually he gets messages which take him to Peru. His wife goes with him. And then the first book ends as he's, getting ready to walk through this dimensional door, which I thought was a good place to stop. So actually the book starts there in Peru, right before the dimensional door, and then he comes back and tells how he got there, and then it shows him about to walk through, like his legs lifted up and he's going to walk through. Then book 2 is what happens to him on the other side, which will not only be what we would call dreamland or the other side, it'll be not many, but some other dimensions of existence. And this will probably be the most difficult book that I've ever been involved with. And I forgot to say, I'm not a novelist, so I have a friend named Karen in England who's helping me with this. So normally what happens, she writes the chapter, then I go back over it and make notes and edit, and I tell her, like when we got the main character on the other side in book 2, which is what we're working with, she said there was a sun there, and I knew there's no sun on the other side. And when I was reading the books by Sylvia Brown, whose guide Francine talked to her and started telling her about what goes on, she also said there is no sun. There's just this illumination that's around you, like it's just there. this illumination. So now how the blue skull shows up in the first book is